Hi, I'm Evie Kimsing for IdentityWeek.net. I'm here today at Identity Week Asia. The keynotes have just finished, and I'm joined now by Andrew Black, who's Managing Director for ConnectID at the Australian Payments Plus. It's great to meet you today, Andrew. So you've worked with a number of banks to deliver ConnectID. What has the project revealed about the level of trust we have in banks and their security of our data?
It's really kind of confirmed a few things that we've sort of researched over the last couple of years. So firstly, ConnectID is an identity exchange. So we don't hold any data, store any data, know anything about customers. So we need trusted anchors or trusted participants such as major banks who already know who you are, already know something about you, have strong fraud and security profiling. But what is really sort of just, I guess, confirmed and clarified, especially over the last couple of years where there's been significant data breaches, is that individuals trust banks. So they trust their bank in particular, not only to look after their money, but also to look after their data and their identity. So that's what sort of confirmed that hypothesis for us, that banks make really good trust anchors, really for identity. And we see that globally as well, in Canada and Germany, in the Nordics in particular as well, that using banks working together in a collaborative network, individuals feel comfortable storing identity and having that looked after.
And the initiative then, ConnectID simplifies customer identification needs for other businesses. How does this compare with verifying and onboarding banks' own customers?
So the main difference is we're reusing that. So our purpose really is to reduce the amount of PII or the amount of data that individuals need to share. And what that means is when you think about onboarding to a new service, or whether it's banking or not, or even coming to an event, typically have to share a passport or a driving license or some form of document capture. And with that comes a whole heap of unnecessary additional data. So the hotel I just checked into doesn't really need to know if I can drive a scooter or a lorry on my driving license. It just needs to know I'm Andrew. And that's what we use by working with banks to just select the minimum amount of data to disclose, just that minimum amount of PII to be shared that I am Andrew. And for example, I am over 18. But also you're not having to register or sign up for a new service. So my bank already know who I am. They already know sort of a trusted pattern of behavior of who I am and where I typically transact. So I don't need to sign up for a new service. It's really for customers thinking about how do we reduce the amount of time they have to share the data and reduce that amount as well.
And it helps customers presumably keep control of their data. You're sharing only the necessary amount.
Exactly.
A new bill has been called to regulate identity verification services. Will trusted organisations, governments be relied upon to provide their data sources? Is that?
Yeah. So in Australia in particular, there's been a real drive towards legislation over the last sort of since 2016, but the last 18 months has seen quite a bit of an acceleration given the number of cyber breaches that we've had as a country. But what that says to do is sort of set a standard and a bit of a framework really for transparent levels of trust. And that's what ConnectID does as well as a network. So we provide sort of a sort of core sense of what's called a scheme, so everybody knows how to trust each other. But what government's done is putting together a framework that will allow public and private sector interoperability. And that has a couple of different facets. So part of that is a accreditation framework, where basically organizations who are either exchanges or identity providers can go through and go through a government accreditation, which involves lots of penetration testing, fraud testing, and sort of relevant different sort of liability testing as well. And then you'll basically be able to be accredited. And ConnectID was the first accredited exchange into the federal government's framework for Australia. And that sort of sets out a bit of a starting point for allowing a customer to not only use their bank, but also a government service and allow that transfer of data. So at the moment, you can use your Australian government identity or digital identity and digital services, just government agencies. But this will allow that sort of bridge between public and private sector. And ConnectID will then allow you to use, for example, your bank to log into maybe your healthcare records in the future. Or similarly, the other way around, use your digital government identity to log in to set up a new bank account, for example. So it starts to create that interoperable public-private sector bridge.
Brilliant. I just want to move on to wallets then. Are the big players like Visa and MasterCard transforming the whole payments ecosystem?
I think wallets are transforming the payments ecosystem. So Australian Payments Plus has been around in Australia for sort of almost 40 years and a variety of different payments products we have. So we started off with FPOS, which is the domestic payment equivalent of a Visa or MasterCard. BPay, which provides bill payments, and also MPP, which is now real-time account-to-account payments. But wallets are sort of transforming the customer experience. So allowing customers to choose where they want to use certain bits of data, where they want to shop, have a sort of consistent digital wallet, which stores more than just payment information on their phone. Visa, MasterCard doing cool things. But I think what we see globally actually is really important, that data sovereignty and local competition are really important. So we see in different jurisdictions, not in Australia, but we see in for example, the UK and some EU jurisdictions where there isn't a healthy domestic payments provider like an FPOS, interchange fees and pricing goes up for small businesses. So having a strong domestic sovereign payments provider such as Australian Payments Plus and the customer choices on wallets helps keep that competitive and also helps businesses benefit, because businesses benefit the most from customers having choices on how to pay and also keeping the cost down.
Yeah, and wallets are full of digital credentials and services. You've got traditional bank services and challengers banks. How are they responding to instances of fraud compared to the traditional banks?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is a shift from, over the last couple of years, banks being targets for fraud, and challengers, fintech startups moving really quickly to try and beat them or, take chunks of the pie, to actually realizing that they need to work together. So we've seen quite a lot of collaboration the last, again, probably 18 months, and the cybercrime sort of rises has sort of led to that. In Australia, for example, we had $3 billion worth of scams in 2022. So challengers and fintechs have realized they have to work with banks together to collaborate. And actually this morning in one of the keynotes from, I think it was Kendrick Lee from SingPass, they had the analogy of, sort of a dam starting to burst. And when they see scams, they think about, well, if you see a trickle first, if you leave it, it'll sort of turn into a flood. But it's not good enough just to divert the water, which is what we've been doing for years, which is just plug one gap and then it floods someone else's town or bank or organization. So in Australia, we see like banks, startups, fintechs, the payments community working together to try and plug the whole thing. So there's room for competition to help improve offerings, services. Security will only grow as a sort of product as a service going forward. But really it all starts with collaboration. And that's with government, that's with police, that's with banks, with challengers. The only way we make a dent really in scams and fraud is by collaborating.
Sure. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.